Well, hi, everybody. I'm Don Stewart, and welcome to our second edition of Breaking News for this Wednesday, the first day of October, 2025. And before we get to the latest news, I need to make a correction. Tonight in Israel is Yom Kippur, not Rosh Hashana. That was September 22nd to the 24th. Tonight starts the Day of Atonement, the holiest day in the Jewish calendar, not the New Year. Sorry about the confusion. I did the story late last night when I put it together, and I'm not that good at night. I'm a morning guy, but I blew it, so forgive me for that. But the point was still the same about the fall feast and the rapture happening around this time, because the whole idea is sometime around Rosh Hashanah or the first of the year and the Day of Atonement. So anyway, that part at least works, but I blew it. So it's the holiest day of the year, Yom Kippur. Everything slows down, everything stops. In fact, it's according to the scripture, it's the only day where God commanded a fast in the entire Old Testament for the Israelis and the Jews and that. So um, again, it was mandatory for the people in the Old Testament times. Now, it's important as believers in Christ, we need to understand the Day of Atonement has already happened with the death of Jesus Christ on Calvary's cross, where he atoned, he took away the sins of the world. Although it's an important day that was celebrated in Israel, it was an important day that was celebrated in the fall. The actual Day of Atonement, as far as the New Testament's concerned, the death of Christ took place in the spring. In addition, his death was a once and for all event. In other words, it's not repeated yearly like the Day of Atonement. Once and for all, it took place where he took the penalty for the sins of the world upon himself on Calvary's cross, then, of course, rose from the dead on Easter Sunday morning. So sorry about that again, but lest we forget. So the holiest day in the calendar for the Jews, and it's one where they'll be thinking, they'll be praying. They don't have a temple, obviously, to do sacrifices, so it's a time of works, reflection, prayer, and the such like. We'll talk about that a little bit tomorrow. But everything is shut down there in Israel. It's that's what happens. Okay, now to the headlines. We have three of them from the Jerusalem Post. The IDF, the Israeli Defense Force, after completing the takeover of the Netzarim corridor, Defense Minister Katz says this is the last chance for Gaza residents to leave the area. In other words, they've got to go down to the south, got to go immediately. If you remain in the north, they will stay. A state, as the article states, if you remain in the north near Gaza City, we're going to treat you as someone who belongs or supports Hamas. So it's a pushing is really coming. Push comes to shove right now at this particular time. Now we have two other stories too, and they're both from the UK, and they're beyond horrible. But this is what's happening in the world. The first is called Stochastic terrorism. Farage's security cut by the UK government ahead of the PM branding the Reform leader an enemy. Nigel Farage is the leader of the Reform Party. They've got the most popular party in the UK. If the election were held today, he would probably win. What the president prime minister did, as we will see, Starmer, he cut his security by three quarters, by 75%. And he's calling him all these names like a fascist, a racist, and all this. It sounds like he's trying to get him something to happen to him, like what happened to Charlie Kirk. So this is a terrible story. It's from the UK. But an even worse story is one after that. It's from the Citizen Free Press. A Citizen Free Press. And if you go to their website, it's under the heading Britain is Lost, and we'll explain it. You think this one was a bad one, just wait to the next one. Okay, let's get to these because this is what's going on right now. First headline, the IDF completing takeover of Netzarim corridor, Defense Minister Katz says. This is the last chance for Gaza residents who are interested in moving southward and leaving Hamas terrorists isolated in Gaza City. The IDF is finishing the takeover in the Netzarim corridor, Defense Minister Katz said today, Wednesday. He noted the takeover divides Gaza between the northern and southern halves. This will tighten the encirclement around Gaza City, and anyone leaving it southward will have to pass through the IDF's inspection checkpoints. This is the last chance for Gaza residents who are interested in moving southward and leaving Hamas terrorists isolated in Gaza in the face of the ID activity that continues at full strength. Those who remain in Gaza City will be terrorists and terrorist supporters. That is the message now. Now, Hamas statements on the Netzarim corridor. The military later announced the troops positioned at the corridor have operated to disrupt the capabilities of the Hamas terrorist organization. The terrorist organization issued a response to Katz on Telegram, saying that his words represent a blatant manifestation of arrogance and disregard for the international community and the principles of international humanitarian law, whatever that means. All right, the terror organization already also accused the defense minister of ethnic cleansing and forced displacement. Well, they're forcing the displacement so they can get rid of you, Hamas. That's what's going on right now. We'll continue to follow that story, but basically the line has been drawn. If you're not south now in the Netzarim corridor, you're fair game as far as the Israelis are concerned because they bottled Hamas in now in that one area of Gaza City. Okay, now. Here's the second headline. It's called Stochastic Terrorism. Farage's security cut by UK government ahead of Prime Minister branding the reform leader an enemy. This is his political, opponent called an enemy. Reform UK says British government slashed the state-provided security detail to Nigel Farage just weeks before embarking on what the party claimed was a targeted incitement of the hard left to attack Mr. Farage and his colleagues. The Home Office, the UK government department analogous to an interior ministry, and which deals with issues including the security and policing, has decimated Nigel's security detail, reducing it by 75%. Reform UK spokesman Zia Youssef said on Wednesday morning. While party donors stepped in to boost the security package provided to Mr. Farage privately, given the history of being a target for attacks and recent assassinations and attempts against political figures in Western nations, Mr. Yusuf said the development gave context to the sudden flow of invective from senior government officials against reform and against Mr. Farage in recent days. He said that's why so many of us around Nigel are so worried now, decrying the rhetoric from the government, which has labeled Mr. Farage, his party policies, and possibly his voters as, quote, racist and worse than racist, as the most extraordinary, unprecedented, vicious, and coordinated set of demonization attacks and incitements of violence, as Mr. Yusuf saying. He invoked the notion of stochastic terrorism. He explained what that is. Stochastic, I guess that's how you pronounce stochastic, maybe. Terrorism is the incitement of violence against an individual by publicly demonizing and vilifying that person, knowingly encouraging random acts of violence against the target. This was no doubt a big factor in the tragic assassination of Charlie Kirk. Now, this desperate prime minister and his cabinet have coordinated the flooding of our airwaves against the sick strategy against Nigel Farage. Yusuf noted that 11 cabinet ministers have been deployed to promulgate the racist attack line, reflecting on the timing of Mr. Farage having his government security detail cut back and the demonization at the hands of the prime minister. Yusuf told Times Radio on Wednesday that given the stakes, I will not mince my words. If anything were to happen, we would hold Keir Starmer squarely responsible. Yusuf told Sky News in a combative interview in which the host repeatedly moved to defend the government from the accusations being leveled. He said this, I've stood next to Nigel as he has been attacked by masked lunatics from Antifa. I've seen them try to attack Nigel. I've seen them try to attack our supporters, our volunteers, our activists. That's why we're so appalled by this. The prime minister is supposed to be a human rights lawyer, should know far better than this. He knows he can't beat Nigel in the ballot box. He certainly can't. The Starmer's support amongst his own constituents are way, way down. So he's resorted to inflammatory vilification to incite violence against him. Now, this is how the left works. This is me talking. They cannot win in the marketplace of ideas, so what do? They resort to whatever it takes to neutralize their opponents. Sadly, this fits the predicted rule of the coming final Antichrist, where opposition to his program as well as his demands will not be allowed. Failure to take his mark and worship him and his image will not only not allow someone to buy or sell if you fail to take the mark, it'll also be a death sentence. And this is what's coming up in the future. Therefore, what we see happening now in our world with governments who try to outlaw criticism, they're becoming more and more bold. And we're seeing this in the EU. We've seen it in the UK. You just can't criticize the government. Now, for a biblical understanding of the final Antichrist, please see our book, The Final Antichrist, The Coming Caesar. It's a free download from our website, Educating Our World, under the heading of Bible prophecy. Now, I have no words, literally no words for this last story. This is from Citizen Free Press, CFP. If it's still on the page there, if you get a chance to see it, it's down a little bit further with all the headlines they have. It's called Britain is Lost. Citizen Free Press has a link to a story and it's titled Britain is Lost. Get this. A 47-year-old British blogger was arrested at his home in the middle of the night. What was his crime? for sharing a meme saying F blank 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 Hamas. Someone from the police hate crime team didn't appreciate the message on social media. His crime, saying in a meme, F-U-C, well, F Hamas. And what happened was, by saying that on a meme, he gets visited in the middle of the night by the police, the hate police, and they arrest him. All right, arrested in his home. Yes, indeed, folks, this is scary. We're not making this stuff up. As with the previous story, the governments of this world are doing more and more despicable things in their desire to control our lives. It's not just happening in China, in North Korea, or in Iran, but also in the West. And so it's a good thing. Scriptures warn us about these things that are things to come as Jesus spoke of them. Life will become more and more difficult for the believer, but we know there's an end game to all of this, the return of Christ. So let's keep our eyes on the prize. So some real difficult stories are coming from the UK, and we've had similar stories in Europe, the EU trying to, squash free speech or any type of criticism of the government. And of course, this is against Hamas. He says this, and I guess that is forbidden now in the UK to criticize Hamas. And this is absolutely incredible. All right. Well, anyway, we'll be back tomorrow as we'll talk a little bit more about the Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur, which is again the high and holiest day in Israel. We'll try and get the story straight tomorrow for you. Again, sorry about that, what we did earlier. I'm Don Stewart. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, as always, may the Lord richly, richly bless.